FRM Part 1, Financial Markets and Products. The next aim statement is hedging strategies using futures. In this aim statement, we will define and differentiate between short hedges and long hedges, and then we also identify the appropriate usage of short and long hedge. Then we look at the arguments in favor and against hedging and the potential impact on the profitability of the firm. Then we'll define the term basis and we look at the basis risk and the various sources of it. And then we also understand how basis risk arise when we are hedging with the futures. Then we look at the concept of cross hedging, where there is some kind of mismatch between the underlying and the future. And then we look at the computation and interpretation of minimum variance hedge and the effectiveness of hedge. We'll also define, contribute and interpret the optimal number of future contracts which are required for hedging purpose. And we also explain how to tail the hedge. So this is an adjustment which is to be made to adjust for the settlement impact. Then we'll explain how to use stock index future contracts to change the beta or the systematic risk of the portfolio. And finally, we look at the concept of rolling the hedge forward to the next month. And we look at the certain kind of risks which are involved during rollover. So let us start. First of all, let us look at the concepts of short and long hedge. What are the situations in which a person needs to go for short hedging or long hedging? Short hedge is the case where the person is promising to sell in future. And the concept of hedging says the objective is to reduce the uncertainty of the future. So suppose there is a person, for example a farmer, who produces corn. So naturally he has a long position in corn since he is going to hold the underlying. Now his objective is to sell his produces in future. The farmer wants to protect himself from future price fluctuations. So he'll go for reducing its risk. How to reduce the risk of a long position? Short hedge. So short hedge solves the purpose to reduce the uncertainty of the person who is already long in that position. Once the farmer gets into short hedge, short contract, he promises to sell the produce in future at a predetermined price. So this price at which the farmer is going to sell the corn in future is already fixed. There is no uncertainty about the selling price. So the downside of the price has been protected for the farmer. So that is how short hedge is working in this case. Now let us look at the other side, which is long hedge. By definition, it is a promise to buy in future. Who would like to get into this kind of contract? For example, there is a company which buys raw material. The company has a risk that raw materials price might rise. So it needs to be protected against the rise. So naturally, it will take a long position. It will promise to buy in future. It gets into a long contract. The price at which the company is going to buy is fixed in advance. So there is no risk of price moving upwards, since the price at which the company is going to buy is predetermined through this long hedge. So if we observe, these two positions, long and short, are opposite to each other. So the needs for different players may be different. one might want to hedge against the price movement upwards, the another player wants to hedge against the downward movement of the price. So that is why they will choose either short hedge or long hedge. But for hedging, the characteristics of the underlying, the spot and that of the future contract should be same. Even their timing should be the same for hedging to be perfect hedge. Otherwise, it will not be able to provide the foolproof protection. Now let us assume that the company was buying, say, corn itself from the farmer, and farmer was short, say, 100 contracts of corn at, say, $100 per contract, and the company was long because it has to buy same 100 contracts of corn at $100 per contract. So this was the agreement between the farmer and the company in the starting. Say 1 month later, at the time of expiry, suppose the price, which will be the spot price, and the forward price of the contract will also converge to the spot price at the time of expiry. Suppose this price become $120. Now the price is $120, but the transaction will still take place at $100 because that is what the contract said. For the farmer, he is selling at $100, though the price is $120. So hedging reduced his gain because he wanted to protect it against the downward price movement. So he will not be able to take advantage of upward movement of price. Because of that, his gain reduced. And the company, which is going to buy at $100, though the market price is $120, is going to gain in this case. Since the company is protected against upward movement, it will still buy at $100. Suppose the price moves to $80 at the time of expiry. Now the transaction again is going to take place at $100 only. For the farmer, it is a gain situation since he is going to sell the product at $100, though the market price is only $80. So he is going to gain $20 per contract because of the future. So he got the advantage of the protection, while the company is going to buy at $100, though the market price is only $80. The company could have bought from the market at 80, but it has to abide by the contract and it has to buy at 100. So the company has a loss of $20 per contract. So this is basically the cost of hedging which the company had to pay, and it has to explain this to its shareholders that why it lost $20 per contract in derivatives. Because the shareholders would want the company to buy the product at $80 because that was the market price. So in hindsight, they might criticize the management for losing in derivatives. So on the same lines, let us look at advantages and disadvantages now. In the favor, first argument is that the hedging provides a protection against any adverse movement of prices of commodity, exchange rate or interest rate, whichever the players are dealing in. The second important argument which goes in the favor of hedging is there is a general lack of expertise in prediction of these variables. For example, if the company is into certain kind of business which uses, say, oil as an input, so the company management may not have an expertise regarding the oil prices prediction because that is not the core business of the company. So it can hedge its position in oil. So it will always get into some long contract in oil since it is going to buy oil for its usage. So this was the another argument in the favor. Since the market variables are exposed to the market risk on which the company management may not have any control, so it is always better to hedge such kind of risk where the company does not have any control, and it should focus on the core business. Now there are certain arguments which are against the hedging. Let us look at them one by one. As we have seen in the last example, there is a cost associated with the hedging. So we are protecting against the adverse movement. But what if there is a favorable movement? As we have seen in the last case, the company wanted to buy the corn at say $100, but the market price fell to $80. So it could buy at $80, but it will not be able to take advantage of this favorable movement because it has already gone into a long contract. So because of the hedging, company is not able to take advantage of the favorable movement. So that is a cost associated with hedging. Criticism in hindsight. So in this case where the company is not able to take the advantage of the favorable movement, it has to answer the questions why the company is losing in derivatives. If the market price of raw material is favorable, it is just $80, why is there a loss of $20 in long futures? So in hindsight, it is very difficult to explain such situation, because in hindsight the hedging might appear unnecessary. Then the argument is also given that shareholders already know that there is a risk in terms of fluctuations in commodity prices, exchange rate, etc. So they are well aware of the risk and they can hedge their risk through diversification or through other means on their own. So the company management should focus on creating value for the shareholders, creating wealth for the shareholders by taking risk, and they do not need to hedge this risk, otherwise their return will be reduced by that extent. Lastly, there is one more argument against hedging is, if the company is able to pass on the fluctuations in these market variables, for example the interest rate or the commodity price, if these fluctuations can be passed on to the consumer and the company's revenues or profit are not affected, in that case there is no need for hedging. So there might be certain industries where the passing of these fluctuations is very easy to prices which are borne by the consumers, but in other industries it may not be feasible to change the price that easily. So there the hedging might be advisable. So this is how we have seen the both sides, the advantages and disadvantages. So it really becomes the management's decision whether it is worth hedging or to what extent the company should hedge its position. As we have seen in the objectives of risk management, the objective of the management is not to reduce the risk entirely, but it is to take the calculated risk so that the possibilities of return is also not compromised. Let us move to the next concept, the basis risk. When we talk about the futures, this is the most important risk which a future contract will have. Basis is nothing but the difference between the spot price and future price. Normally this relationship between spot and future is determined by the cost of carry and the interest rate, etc. Normally the basis is negative because future price is more than the spot price, but there might be certain cases where we find exception to that. So why do the basis risk arise? As we know that the perfect hedge may not be possible. One, where the same contract is not available. Suppose there's a farmer who is selling one kind of corn, but in the market slightly different kind of corn is being traded in futures market, so he has to hedge with that. Or there might be a petroleum product which the company uses as a raw material. It wants to have a long position in that, but this product is not very liquid in the market. It is not traded frequent enough. So it can hedge its position by, say, crude oil. So all we need to look at the good correlation between the asset and underlying contract. So the correlation between them is very good. If the price move very close to each other, then they can be used as hedge against each other. But we need to remember that they are not exactly the same. So there is certain basis risk which remains, because the spot price of one and future price of the another may not converge at the time of expiry completely. So this is the case where we have cross hedge. As we have said, at expiry the basis should be 0. But if these two assets are not exactly same, then our basis may not be 0. So that is the basis risk. Then there could be a mismatch in the hedging horizon. Suppose the company wants to buy a raw material on June 15th, but the future contract is only up to May 30th. The company gets into this contract up to May 30th. It will expire on May 30th, while the position it actually needs it up to June 15th. So there may not be proper hedging because of the mismatch in horizon. So ideally, when the time passes, as we have said, the spot price and future price should converge, and at the expiry they should become 0. But there might be other cases while strengthening or weakening of basis is happening. Suppose spot price rises faster than the future price. Suppose spot price rises more than the future price rise, that is strengthening of the basis. And if the spot price moves a little but the future price moves a lot, then there will be a weakening of basis. So either way, the investor might be exposed to the basis risk. Let us take an example to understand how the strengthening or weakening of basis may create a problem. Suppose spot was at 100 and future was at 110 at one point in time, and the company had a long position in this future. So it is going to buy this particular contract at 110 at the time of expiry. So the company is long future and short underlying, which is at 100, future is at 110. This $10 difference could be attributed to the interest rate or carrying cost, etc. Now the difference is 10. Suppose the spot price moves up by 5 to 105, but the future price moves only by, say, 2. It becomes 112. So this is known as strengthening of basis, because of which there will be a loss. Difference is just 7. Earlier it was 10. So the company has not gained much in the long position but has lost more in the short position. So this is the loss due to strengthening of basis. Now let us look at all the reasons because of which the basis risk arise, the main sources of basis risk. One could be there could be interruption in the convergence. As we have seen in this case, if the person is forced to close the position at this point in time before maturity, for the expiry of the contract, then there might not be proper convergence. There is an interruption in the convergence in this case, because of which the basis risk might arise. Then there could be changes in the cost of carry. Suppose at the time of getting into the contract the cost of carry was 10, suppose it decreases to 5, then the relationship between spot and future changes. As a result, the basis could also change. The other sources could be the cross hedge, as we have already seen. If there's a good correlation between the underlying and the asset which is hedged, but they are not perfect substitute, they are not moving exactly on the same rates, then it may not be proper hedge. It could be a case of cross hedge where the basis risk arises. The time horizon could be different. Even the liquidity may be different. For example, the future contract may not be as liquid, so some amount of liquidity premium or the edge has to be given up at the time of trading in the future contract, and that could be a reason for the basis risk, the difference between the spot and future at the time of expiry. Now let us look at the next concept, hedge ratio. Hedge ratio is nothing but the ratio of positions which we need to take in futures in order to hedge with respect to the underlying quantity. One of the most common confusion regarding hedge ratio is that we try to hedge in terms of value, which is not right. Let us take an example. Suppose we are having a long position as 100 contracts. We are long 100 contracts in certain underlying, and in order to hedge, if we want to short, say index future, how many index futures we want to sell? Suppose the value of this 100 contract is say 1 million. So what should be the value of short index futures? Should it be equal to $1 million, or should it be less? Should it be more? How should we determine that? Suppose one index future contract is of 1000 and 1000 is the price at which it is being traded today. So instead of just doing value hedging, that 1 million long and 1 million short, we need to look at the movements. Although if we do value hedging, we will be having zero position in terms of money. Whatever we receive from short, we will pay for long, but actually we will not be hedged. For that, we need to look at the movements. So we need to know if long moves up by 1% in value, by what percentage short will come down. Suppose the portfolio is riskier than the index future. Suppose when it goes 1% up, the index goes only 0.5% up. So when you're short, you will be only 0.5% down. So for that to be hedged completely, it should be in that ratio, the expected movement. So here, suppose it moves 1% up and the short index move 0.5% down. So we should take twice in this. Suppose we are 1 million long, $1 million long. At the same time, we should be $2 million short in index. This is 1 million long in our portfolio. So $2 million short in index, and then we will be hedged completely. So we need to know the ratio of these expected movements, expected percentage movements, and how they will be captured through a parameter which we already know, the standard deviation and correlation coefficient, or together we can say covariance between the two. So let us look at the formula, then we will discuss it further. So the formula is rho into sigma s divided by sigma f. So it is looking at correlation coefficient and ratio of standard deviations. So what are the expected movement in spot, what are the expected movement in future, and then how correlated they are. Combined effect will be the optimal hedge ratio. So the optimal hedge ratio will incorporate the degree of correlation between the prices whether they move together, whether they move in opposite direction, what is the kind of correlation between these two prices. Then it will give us the size of future relative to spot. For example, we are hedging spot with future. Okay. In that case, suppose spot moves 1% and the future moves 1.5%. Suppose standard deviation of spot is 1.5%, and standard deviation of future is 1.5%. Future moves more, it is more volatile, for example, as compared to this spot, and say correlation coefficient is 1, then what we have to do, which position should be more? So for 3 contracts of future, or simply we can write 1.5 contracts of spot, there should be 1 contract of future. Right? If we have just 1 contract, it will move 1.5%. If we have 1.5 contract of spot, they will also move 1.5%. So this position is hedged. So if we look at the size of future relative to spot, so in this case size of future relative to spot is 1 upon 1.5, or if we write in terms of standard deviation, we write standard deviation of spot 1 divided by 1.5. So that way either we can say the size of future relative to spot, or we can say the standard deviation of spot with respect to future. So this is opposite. We can term it in either way. This can also be called as equivalent to beta. Let us see how. This is the optimal hedge ratio is equal to rho between spot and future, the correlation coefficient, into sigma s divided by sigma f. Now if we multiply both numerator and denominator by sigma s, it is going to be sigma s square divided by sigma s, sorry, we multiplied by sigma f. So it becomes sigma f square in the denominator and sigma f in the numerator. Or in other words, we can write it as this is covariance between spot and future divided by future square, variance of future. Or we can write beta of spot with respect to future. So this is another way of looking at optimal hedge ratio. The other concept is coefficient of determination and goodness of fit. We know that coefficient of determination is nothing but r square, and this is also called the goodness of fit for the spot and future. So if we look at the correlation between the spot and future, and if we look at the regression between them, suppose the dependent variable is spot and independent variable is future. So we have a relationship of something like this, S equal to A into F plus B. So A and B are coefficients. So this goodness of fit, R square, will tell how much of the movement in spot can be explained by the movement in future. So it will tell how closely they are related to each other. So that is why it is called coefficient of determination. Let us move to the next concept. Okay, let us take one example before we move further. It says a trader computed the correlation coefficient between the spot and future to be 0.9. So it is given rho SF is 0.9. The annual standard deviation of the spot price sigma S is given to be 0.2, and the annual standard deviation of future price is given to be 0.1. Sigma F is 0.1. So we are asked to calculate the hedge ratio. So we can simply apply the formula. The hedge ratio is equal to rho into sigma S divided by sigma F. So it is going to be 0.9 into 0.2 divided by 0.1. So hedge ratio becomes 1.8. So the answer becomes 1.8, which is the hedge ratio in this case. Now if we want to calculate the hedge quantity, then we can find out. Suppose we want to hedge 1000 contracts of oil. This is what needs to be hedged. So how many future contracts we want? We can simply write N equal to hedge ratio 1.8 into QA, the quantity of asset, say 1000, into, suppose one contract is for 10 barrel, so 1000 into 10. And similarly, let us see the future contract. What is the quantity there? Suppose in one contract there is 100 barrel. So this will give us how many future contracts we want. So the answer will become 180 contracts, where each contract is for 100 barrel. As we can clearly see that the movement in spot is much more than the movement in future. That is why we need to have more number of future contract in order to hedge less amount of spot. So this was in terms of quantity. There is another concept which is called tailing the hedge. So if we try to take the impact of daily settlement into account, we need to look at the price also. We need to look at the spot price and future price. For that we just need to multiply by spot and divide by future. So we are, instead of the quantity, we are just taking the values. So if we take the values, we get a new hedge ratio, and this is try to avoid the overhedge. Suppose due to the change in price we might be overhedged. Our hedging position might change daily, but it is not always advisable to adjust the hedge on daily basis. But still, if we want, we can do this tailing the hedge so that we are not overhedged. Let us move to the next concept, which is hedging with stock index futures. Suppose we have a portfolio which includes different stocks and different ratio, not necessarily the replication of the index, but some portfolio. We can calculate the overall beta of the portfolio, and now we want to hedge it with the stock index future. We know the index can largely represent the whole market, and it can be useful if we are hedging with the stock index. Let us see how can we use it. The number of contracts which are required to hedge a portfolio completely is going to be beta of the portfolio into the value of the portfolio, what you want to hedge, and the divided by value of the futures contract. So what is the value of one future contract? You can divide by that and you will get the number of future contracts that are required to hedge a particular portfolio completely. The value of this future contract can come from the future price into the contract multiplier, which is already known. Now suppose we have a portfolio which has beta, that is the systematic risk of the portfolio, given to be 1.4. That is, it is 40 times riskier than the market portfolio, which is represented by the index. So here if we see, it is used as a hedge ratio. The portfolio which we are targeting to hedge is of $1 million value. Suppose the future price, say S&P, its price is 100 and the contract multiplier is say 500. So we need to buy minimum of 500. Now the value of one future contract is how much? 500 into 100. So that becomes 50,000. So this is the value of one future contract, and since beta is 1.4, our portfolio is 1.4 times riskier than the index portfolio. So we need to buy more contracts. in order to hedge it. So 1.4 into the portfolio value, which is $1 million, divided by value of one future contract, 50,000. So this will give us 20. So 20 into 1.4, which is 28. So we need to buy 28 future contracts to hedge our portfolio completely in this case. Now there might be cases where we do not want to hedge our portfolio completely, but we want to just control the risk. Suppose due to certain decision in the portfolio's beta becomes higher, which is beyond the target portfolio. So we can adjust the beta by doing partial hedging. So let us look at that concept where we are trying to adjust the portfolio beta by using index futures. So when we want to reduce the systematic risk of the portfolio, we can hedge it partially and take the portfolio beta to the target beta. Or there might be a case where we want to increase the systematic risk. So then we can accordingly take similar position in future contract. So if you want to increase the risk, we can take the same position. If you want to reduce the risk, we can take the opposite position so that the portfolio's beta comes down. So if you want to calculate how many number of contracts we need to buy or sell to adjust the beta to beta star, which is the target beta. So this is the formula. This is value of the portfolio. This is the value of underlying asset. So this will tell us how many number of contracts we want so that we can change the beta to the target beta. Let us say the portfolio's beta earlier was 1.2 and we want to reduce the portfolio's beta to 0.8. We want to be a little risk averse here. We are reducing our risk from 1.2 to 0.8. The value of portfolio is suppose $2 million and the assets value, which is our suppose future, index future, and value of one contract is say $100,000. So accordingly the number of contracts which we want to trade is 1.2 minus 0.8 into 2 million divided by $100,000. So which is 0.4 is the difference into 20. So 8 contracts we need to buy. So positive sign we should buy. If it is negative we should sell. But in this case we already had a position. We want to reduce our long position. Then only we'll be able to reduce our beta, but we have used it wrongly. We should have taken beta star minus beta. So it will become 0.8 minus 1.2. So that will give us minus 8. So minus 8 means we have to sell 8 contracts. If we sell 8 contracts in future, that will reduce our exposure. We are partially hedged. And our exposure, our systematic risk comes down. Suppose our portfolio beta was 1.2 and we want to increase it to 1.6. We want to increase our exposure, increase our systematic risk. So number of contracts which we are going to buy or sell will be 1.6. Beta star has to come first, minus 1.2. Then we can multiply it by again 2 million by 100,000, which is 20. So it will become positive 4 into 20, 80 contracts. Sorry, 8 contracts. So we will buy 8 contracts. Since we are trying to increase our exposure, we already had long position in our portfolio of $2 million. We'll buy 8 more contracts of this future so that we can increase the systematic risk beta of the portfolio from 1.2 to 1.6. So we need to remember the signs here. Beta star will come first. Beta star minus beta is the number of contract. Positive sign says long and negative sign says short the contract. Now let us look at the last concept, which is rolling the hedge. As we have seen, suppose we have a spot position, say long, at 15th of June. We want to sell our product at 15th of June. Suppose on May 31st, the future which we are short to hedge our position expires. So now what we have to do on this date? Suppose our future is going to expire, right? So we were short May contract and we are long spot. So this is how we were hedged. But we know that this contract is going to expire in May end. So we are going to do long May and short June. When it is going to expire, on expiry day, we are going to square off this position which was there in the May contract and take a new position in June contract, so that we can roll the hedge over to the next month. This process is called rolling the hedge. So when we are very close to the maturity, we need to hedge our rules. We need to hedge. For that, we need to roll our position to next contract. So because of this, the rollover risk arises, because in this process we might lose certain amount. The basis risk, earlier the basis was spot minus May future. Now the new position is spot minus June future. So this is the change in basis. So because of that, there is a risk called rollover risk which may arise. So that is why we need to make sure that maturities match exactly, and in the process of rollover there is not much significant loss. Now let us look at a few questions. Question number 1 says, given the standard deviation of the spot price and future prices 10% and 20% respectively. So this is sigma S, this is sigma F, and the correlation coefficient between them is 0.8. We know it is represented by rho SF is 0.8. What is the variance of the basis? Now we need to understand what is the variance of the basis. We already know what is the basis. Basis is nothing but the difference between spot and future, right? So we can say that the variance of basis is equal to sigma S square, that is the variance of spot, plus sigma F square, the variance of future, minus 2 into rho into sigma S into sigma F. This is nothing but from the formula. If we have A minus B, its variance is going to be sigma A square plus sigma B square minus 2 rho of AB into sigma A into sigma B. This is how we calculate. So here sigma S is given, which is 0.1. So 0.1 square plus 0.2 square minus 2 into the correlation coefficient, which is given to be 0.8 in this case, into 0.1 into 0.2. So let us see how much does it add up to. It is 0.01 plus 0.04 minus this is 0.032. So this will become 0.05 minus 0.032, 0.018. So this is our variance. If we are asked standard deviation, we can take square root of it. So this is variance. Let us see the options. 0.012 is wrong. 0.018. Yes, this is right. 0.13 is wrong. 0.1 is wrong. So we should be careful. We are not taking the square root. Otherwise it will come 0.13, which is C. But we are asked the variance of the basis, not the standard deviation. So B is the right option. Let us look at question number 2. It says an equity portfolio of $20 million has S&P 500 as benchmark. So this is the index portfolio which can be used for hedging or reduction or increase in the beta of the portfolio. The S&P 500 index is currently traded at 1000 and the corresponding portfolio beta is 1.4. With respect to this benchmark, the beta of the portfolio is 1.4. The multiplier for this S&P 500 is say 20. The value of the portfolio is $20 million. Now how can one reduce the beta of this portfolio by 50%? So our beta is 1.4 and we need to reduce it. So target beta remains. How do we reduce it by 50%? Make it 0.7. So 1.4 to 0.7, half of it. That is a reduction of 50%. So let us see how to do it. So number of contract which we want to buy or sell for S&P 500 will be given by beta of target 0.7 minus beta of the portfolio 1.4 into the value of our portfolio 20 million divided by the futures value. So we have 20 is a future multiplier and 1000 as value, so it is 20,000. Automatically this is minus 700. Let us look at the options. We should short 700 contracts. So D is the right option. We will short 700 contracts of S&P to reduce the beta of portfolio from 1.4 to 0.7. Let us look at the next question. Again on the similar lines, it says equity portfolio of $20 million has S&P as benchmark. Currently it is at $1,000. Future multiplier is 20. Portfolio beta is 1.2. But now we want to increase the beta of the portfolio to its double. Current beta of the portfolio is 1.2. The target beta is 2.4. We want to make it double. We want to increase the risk. So we have the long position. Value is 20 million. So we can use the same formula. The number of contracts will be 2.4 minus 1.2 into the value of the portfolio 20 million divided by 1000 into 20. So it will become 1200. So this is positive. So it says long. So we are going to buy 1200 contracts of S&P 500 future further long position so that we can increase our beta of the portfolio to its double. So let us look at the options. 1200 long. So B is the right answer. Now let us take next question. It says if the covariance between the spot and the future is 0.01 and the annual standard deviation of the spot price is 0.25 and that of future is 0.1, compute the optimal hedge ratio. So we know the formula of optimal hedge ratio, which is rho SF into sigma S divided by sigma F. The standard deviations of both and rho. So we do not know what is rho in this case since covariance is given and not the correlation coefficient. But we can find that out. Rho is equal to covariance of spot and future divided by sigma S and sigma F. So let us put these values. Covariance is 0.01. This will get cancelled out. Divided by sigma F square. What is that sigma F? 0.1 square. So it is going to be 1. Optimal hedge ratio is 1. Or we could have simply written. We know that optimal hedge ratio can also be written as beta. We know the formula of beta, which is covariance divided by sigma S, sigma F square. Covariance between spot and future divided by sigma F square. That is what we have done actually here. This is nothing but the value of beta. So optimal hedge ratio is going to be 1. So C is the right answer. Let us take one more question. It says which of the following is not a source of basis risk? We have already seen the sources of basis risk in the previous slides. So let us say, what does it say? the future contracts may be required to be closed out before its delivery month. That is true. There could be a situation. We have seen the interruption in the conversions that may arise because of closing it out before delivery month. That is a source of basis risk. The asset to be hedged may not be exactly same as the underlying future contract. This is the case of cross hedging. So this is also a source of basis risk. The counterparty of derivative future in this case may not meet the obligation. This is the counterparty risk, but this is not a source of basis risk. So C is not the source of basis risk. Let us see the last option as well. There's uncertainty regarding the precise time when the asset will be bought or sold. Yes, this uncertainty is contributing to the basis risk. So even D is contributing. So C is not the source of basis risk. C is the right answer. So this was about the hedging strategies using futures. Thank you.